Okay, so get this right. A grandmother. She's trying to turn her life around, in one of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods. And she ends up murdered because of it. It's a really tragic story. Ruthie Mae McCoy. We're diving deep today into this article from a website called Investor. It's called The True Story Behind the Murder of Ruthie Mae McCoy, a case of greed, paranoia, and tragic loss.
Wow.
Yeah, so, you might be thinking, okay, another true crime story, but this one really isn't just about a crime. This is about poverty. It's about mental health, and it's about how sometimes, even when you're trying to make things better, it can put you in danger. So we're going to try and untangle all the different threads of this case and try to see what lessons we can learn from it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a story that really makes you question how we as a society support those who are trying to escape difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's start with kind of the setting. Chicago's Abbott Homes housing project. This place had a really, really rough reputation. It was known for its crime and lack of opportunity. But in the middle of this, you have Ruthie Mae McCoy, a grandmother struggling with paranoia, but she's actively seeking help at Mount Sinai Psychiatric Center. She was also working towards getting her high school equivalency. So this woman she was really determined to create a better life for herself.
Yeah, and I think what's crucial here is that she managed to qualify for Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. This program is honestly, it's a lifeline. For many people who are disabled or can't work, it provides a basic income to help them meet their needs. And for someone in Ruthie Mae's situation, this could have been a game changer, maybe even a way out of Abbott Homes.
Right. And it was a turning point, at least financially, right? She received a check for almost $2,000, including all the back payments. So, think about that for a minute. I mean, we might not think much of a couple $1,000s, but for Ruthie Mae, this was huge. She finally had some breathing room, so she did. You know what a lot of us would do? She bought a warm winter coat and a few other things just to make life a little more comfortable. It's almost heartbreaking knowing what happens next.
Right, and that's what's I think so striking about this case, is that this seemingly positive development, this financial stability, tragically becomes a catalyst for her demise. It's such a stark reminder of the complex realities of poverty, where something as simple as a new winter coat can actually make you a target.
Yeah.
It highlights the lack of security, both physical and financial, that so many people face every single day.
So the article describes how on this night, someone broke into her apartment through a hole in the bathroom wall. Imagine that, living in a place where your own bathroom wall isn't even secure.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So there were these two men, Edward Murnay Turner and John Whiteboy Hondras. They were responsible. They'd been going around just checking out apartments to rob, and they saw Ruthie Mae's new possessions as an opportunity.
So this detail about the hole in the wall, I think it's really significant because it really speaks to the conditions in Abbott Homes, the lack of basic maintenance, lack of safety. It also underscores the vulnerability of these residents. These weren't sophisticated criminals.
Yeah.
They were targeting, high-profile individuals or anything. This was really a crime of opportunity, born from desperation.
Yeah.
And just a lack of empathy.
Yeah. And then they break in, and they end up shooting Ruthie Mae. And what do they steal? They steal a TV.
They're robbed.
And a rocking chair. Things that, might seem ordinary to you and me, but probably represented, a sense of normalcy and comfort that she was striving for. It just adds another layer of tragedy to this whole situation.
Absolutely. These weren't just material possessions.
Yeah.
They represented her attempt at creating a better life. Imagine having those small comforts ripped away from you, along with your life. It's a stark reminder that for some, even the smallest steps towards a better life can be met with unimaginable violence.
So the article then shifts to the investigation, led by detectives Anthony Menina and Ray Leuer. And it sounds like they were up against it. Right from the start.
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember, the relationship between law enforcement and the residents of Abbott Homes was, to put it mildly, strained. And this lack of trust makes it incredibly difficult to solve crimes. Because people are they're hesitant to come forward with information.
It's like a catch-22, right? The very system that's supposed to protect you is seen as the enemy, which just makes everyone more vulnerable.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle that's often rooted in, systemic issues and historical injustices.
Okay, so there was a witness, a young man named Tim Brown, who lived in a neighboring apartment. He told police he saw the two men, Turner and Hondras, coming and going from Ruthie Mae's apartment. And he even heard the gunshots. But here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Yeah.
So witness testimony.
Yeah.
can be incredibly valuable, but it's also notoriously unreliable.
Right. And in this case, there were some inconsistencies. In Brown's timeline, it didn't quite match up with the official police response time. Plus, there was no physical evidence,
Hmm.
like fingerprints or the murder weapon. So imagine, you're trying to piece together what happened, you have limited information, and a community that's reluctant to talk to the
Right.
police.
It's a puzzle
Yeah.
with a lot of missing pieces.
Mm.
And it's made even more challenging by that pre-existing tension
Yeah.
between law enforcement and the community.
So how did the detectives move forward? Did they manage to get any solid evidence? So they did, right? They caught a break. But it wasn't like,
You know, that slam dunk evidence you see on TV. They found the stolen TV and that rocking chair at Turner's mother's apartment. So it wasn't like a direct link to the murder or anything, but it was enough to at least place them at the scene and corroborate parts of Tim Brown's testimony.
Right, it's a classic example of building a case on circumstantial evidence. You take those seemingly small details, the witness accounts, the stolen goods, the suspect's attempts to kind of cover their tracks, and you weave them together to create a compelling narrative.
So what happened next? Did they go to trial?
They did. And both men were found guilty of murder and sentenced to prison.
It's interesting to think about the challenges of prosecuting a case like this, especially in an environment where that trust between law enforcement and the community is so fragile.
Right, I bet that just made things even tougher for the prosecutors.
Yeah.
But in the end, there was at least some justice for Ruthie Mae and her family. But as we've been discussing, you know this story. It's so much bigger than just one crime. It's almost like the article is holding up a mirror to society, showing us the harsh realities of poverty, the lack of support for mental health, and the vulnerability of people who are just trying to escape those circumstances.
Yeah, and it really raises these questions about the unintended consequences
Yeah.
of programs like SSI. While it's vital for so many, it can also, in certain situations, make individuals more vulnerable to exploitation, particularly in environments that lack strong support systems. It's a tragic paradox.
Yeah, it's almost like being punished for trying to improve your life. Ruthie Mae was seeking help for her mental health, working towards her education, and she finally got some financial stability. And then those very efforts, those steps towards a better life, they become factors in her victimization.
It's a really heartbreaking illustration of how these systemic inequalities can create this cycle of vulnerability that's so difficult to break. She was doing everything right, but the system, the environment, the very fabric of her community failed to provide her with the safety and support that she needed.
And you mentioned earlier the strained relationship between the police and Abbott Homes residents. The article touches on that, and it makes you think about how mistrust and fear can really become barriers to justice.
Absolutely. When communities are marginalized and feel unheard, when they have a history of negative interactions with law enforcement, it creates this wall of silence. People become reluctant to cooperate, even when they're victims of crime, because they don't believe the system will actually protect them.
And that lack of trust can make it nearly impossible to solve crimes, which in turn just perpetuates the cycle of violence and mistrust.
Right, exactly. It's a really complex issue with no easy solutions. It requires building bridges, fostering dialogue, and addressing the underlying systemic issues that contribute to this distrust.
So it's clear. Ruthie Mae's story is about so much more than just the crime itself. It's a story that forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about our society. It makes you wonder, how many other Ruthie Mays are out there, struggling against the odds, hoping for a better life, but facing these impossible obstacles?
Right, and it makes you question how we can create a more just and equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their circumstances.
I'm sure listeners out there, feeling the weight of the story, just as we are. It's heavy stuff. But I think it's important to really grapple with these issues, because ignoring them won't make them go away.
I completely agree. It's through understanding and confronting these difficult realities that we can begin to create meaningful change.
So where do we go from here? What are some of the key takeaways we can glean from this deep dive? I think for me, it's realizing that even small acts of kindness and understanding can make a difference. We might not be able to single-handedly change the system, but we can support organizations that are working to improve conditions in communities like Abbott Homes. We can advocate for policies that address poverty and mental health. And maybe most importantly, we can simply be more aware of the struggles that are faced by those around us.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful point. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these issues. But even those small actions, they can have a ripple effect. It's about recognizing the shared humanity in all of us, regardless of our circumstances.
And that brings us back to Ruthie May. Her story, it isn't just a statistic. It's a reminder that every life has value, and every person deserves to feel safe and supported.
It's also a reminder that justice isn't always this neat and tidy resolution. There are these systemic issues at play that contribute to these tragedies. And simply punishing the perpetrators, it doesn't really address the root causes.
Right. We have to look beyond the crime itself and ask ourselves some tough questions. What can we do to prevent these situations from happening in the first place? How can we create a society where individuals like Ruthie May have the resources and the support they need to not only survive, but to thrive?
Yeah, it starts with recognizing the inherent dignity of every human being and working to ensure that everyone has a chance to live a life free from fear and violence.
I know you're out there listening, probably feeling a lot of emotions right now. I mean, it's a heavy story, but I hope it's also sparked a desire in you to learn more, to engage with these issues, and to really be part of the solution.
Yeah, we all have a role to play in building a more just and compassionate world. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply listen to stories like Ruthie May's, remember her name, and honor her memory by working towards a better future.
Yeah, it's about taking that feeling of sadness, that
Right.
anger, and turning it into action. We can't bring Ruthie May back, but we can make sure that her story serves as a catalyst for positive change. And that's a powerful thought to leave with you today. Until next time, keep thinking deeply and stay curious.